The wind howled like a wounded animal across the Montana plains, driving needles of ice into Clara Roan's face as she stumbled from the stagecoach. Her wool traveling coat, once respectable, now hung heavy with frozen mud from the wheel's spray. She clutched a leather satchel to her chest inside, the letters that had brought her 2,000 miles from St. Louis to this godforsaken place called Wolf Pine. "That's all, miss," the driver called down, already eager to move on. "General store's that way, blacksmith's across the street." Clara didn't need directions. She'd memorized every detail from Dale Hartley's letters. Asterisk. The blacksmith shop sits catty-corner from McMurray's general store. Our little house soon to be ours. My dear stands just beyond the livery stable, painted white with green shutters. She picked her way through the churning slush, her boots already soaked through. 29 years old, taller than most men in St. Louis, with hands roughened by years of needlework, she'd come here to be a wife, to finally have what her prettier, smaller, more delicate sisters had found years ago. The blacksmith's shop glowed orange against the gray afternoon. She could hear the ring of hammer on anvil, see the shadows moving inside. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her spine straight. A roan woman didn't slouch, no matter how her stomach twisted. She pushed through the door. The heat hit her first, then the smell of coal and hot metal. 3 men looked up the blacksmith at his anvil, massive and bearded, and 2 others warming themselves by the forge. One of them was Dale. She recognized him immediately from the photograph he'd sent. Slight build, neat mustache, pale eyes that had looked kind in the tintype. Those eyes widened now, but not with joy. "Clara?" His voice cracked on her name. Why are you here?" The letters in her satchel suddenly felt like stones. "You wrote me to come. You said after Christmas, when you had the house ready." "I wrote that before." Dale glanced at his companion, a thin man in a shopkeeper's apron. "Before things changed." Changed. The blacksmith had stopped hammering. The shop fell silent except for the hiss of the forge. Dale stepped forward, but not too close. "I married Alice Brennan last week, the minister's daughter. She's more suitable." Clara felt the blood drain from her face, then rush back hot. "More suitable?" "She's delicate, needs protecting. You're so—" He gestured vaguely at her height, her broad shoulders, her capable hands. "I need a woman who needs me. You understand." The thin man snickered. "Built like a ranch hand. That one. Could probably shoe her own horses." "Now, Virgil," Dale said weakly, but he didn't defend her further. Clara stood there, ice melting from her coat to puddle at her feet. 2,000 miles. She'd sold her sewing machine, her mother's pearl brooch, everything but her needles and thread, for the fair. She'd told everyone she was going to be married. She'd believed him. "The house," she said, voice steady though her hands shook. "You said the house was ready." "Alice and I live there now." Dale couldn't meet her eyes. "You should go back to St. Louis. There's nothing for you here." The blacksmith cleared his throat. "Stage don't come back through for 3 days." "That's not my concern," Dale said quickly. "There's a boarding house on 2nd Street. Mrs. Halloway might have a room." He turned away, dismissing her like a servant. The thin man. Virgil smirked openly. The blacksmith at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Clara stood another moment, letting the fury crystallize in her chest. She wouldn't cry. Not here, not for him. "You're a small man, Dale Hartley," she said clearly. "In every way that matters, I pity your delicate wife." She turned on her heel and walked back into the storm. The wind hit harder now, driving ice sideways. Her wet boots slipped on the boardwalk. People peered from shop windows, the abandoned bride, the fool woman who'd believed lying letters. She could hear the gossip starting already. Mrs. Halloway's boarding house sat 2 streets over, a narrow building squeezed between a saloon and a laundry. The woman who answered wore a suspicious frown. "I need a room," Clara said. "For how long?" "3 days, until the stage comes." "Mrs." Holloway looked her up and down, taking in the mud, the traveling clothes, the absence of a wedding ring. "You're that woman came to marry Dale Hartley." News traveled fast in Wolf Pine. "I need a room," Clara repeated. "Don't rent to unmarried women, especially ones that chase after other women's husbands." "He wasn't married when he wrote." The door slammed. Clara stood on the step, snow gathering on her shoulders. The saloon next door spilled yellow light and rough laughter into the street. Not an option. The few other boarding houses would have heard by now. That's how small towns worked. The white house with green shutters stood beyond the livery stable, just as Dale had described. Their house, the house she'd dreamed about on countless nights, imagining curtains she'd sew, gardens she'd plant. No smoke came from the chimney. Dark windows stared back at her. She made her way there, past the livery where horses stamped and steamed in their stalls. The house stood empty. Of course, Dale had lied about that too. Probably planned to fix it up after she arrived. Let her do the woman's work of making it livable. The door stood unlocked. Inside, dusty floors and bare walls, a fireplace full of old ash, a pump in the kitchen that groaned when she tried it. No furniture except a broken chair in the corner. But it was shelter. Clara dropped her satchel and surveyed her kingdom of lies. Her hands had gone numb, her feet squelched in her boots. She needed fire, needed dry clothes, needed food. She had $12 to her name and skills nobody here wanted. First things first. The wood box by the fireplace held a few split logs. Old newspapers stuffed in the broken chair would work for kindling. Her mother had taught her to build a fire when she was 7 before consumption took her, leaving Clara to raise her younger sisters. The matches in her satchel were damp, but not ruined. It took 6 tries before the paper caught. She nursed the flame carefully, feeding it twigs, then larger pieces, until heat began to creep into the room. Only then did she let herself sit on the floor before the fire. Only then did she pull out Dale's letters. Asterisk, my dearest Clara. The first one read, Asterisk, your photograph arrived today, and I must confess I studied it for near an hour. What a handsome woman you are, tall and strong. Just what a man needs to build a life in Montana territory. She fed them to the fire one by one. All the sweet words, all the promises, all the lies. The paper curled and blackened, sending Dale Hartley's devotion up the chimney in smoke. Someone pounded on the door. Clara's heart jumped. Had Dale changed his mind? Come to apologize, she stood, brushing ash from her skirts, and opened the door. A stranger stood there tall, broad-shouldered, snow dusting his dark coat. His face was all angles and weather-beaten skin, with eyes the color of winter sky. He held a bundle of split wood. Saw the smoke, he said. Figured someone finally bought the place. I didn't buy it. His eyes narrowed, taking in her wet clothes, her muddy boots, the exhaustion she couldn't quite hide. You're the woman from St. Louis, the one Hartley was supposed to marry. Even this stranger knew. Clara lifted her chin. And you are? Jonah Maddox. I run a horse ranch north of town. This is my property. The bottom dropped from Clara's stomach. Your property? Been trying to sell it for 2 years. Hartley said he was interested, but never had the money. Jonah studied her with those pale eyes. Let me guess he told you it was his. She couldn't answer. The last piece of solid ground had just shifted beneath her feet. Jonah sighed and stepped inside without invitation, setting the wood by the fireplace. Storm's getting worse. You can't stay here with no food, no blankets, no proper wood. I'll manage. You'll freeze. He said it matter of fact, like stating the color of the sky. There's a hotel in Billings, 40 miles east. I could take you in the morning. I have no money for hotels. Then family someone to wire for help. Clara thought of her sisters, both married to shopkeepers who already thought her strange. Her father, who'd told her she'd die a spinster if she kept refusing perfectly good men who minded her height and her opinions. No. Jonah studied her a long moment. Then he pulled a key from his pocket and set it on the mantel. Lock up when you leave. Try not to die in my house. It's hard enough to sell as is. He turned to go. Wait. The word escaped before Clara could stop it. When he looked back, she forced herself to ask, "Is there work here for a seamstress?" "Can you sew?" She almost laughed. "Since I was 5 years old. Men's shirts, ladies' dresses, curtains, quilts, even upholstery." "Mrs. Brennan, the minister's wife, sometimes takes in mending. Might could use help." He paused at the door. "That's the mother-in-law of your Mr. Hartley." Of course it was. Jonah left, pulling the door shut behind him. Clara stood alone in the empty house, fire crackling in the grate, storm rattling the windows, abandoned by a man who preferred delicate flowers to sturdy trees, sheltering in a stranger's house. No money, no prospects, no way home. But she was still standing. Clara opened her satchel and pulled out her sewing kit needles, thread, scissors, the thimble that had been her mother's. These had built her life in St. Louis. They would build it again here, or somewhere else, or wherever she had to go. She wouldn't run. Not tonight. Tonight she would dry her clothes, sleep by the fire, and tomorrow she would decide. But she wouldn't crawl back to St. Louis in shame. She wouldn't give Dale Hartley or this town the satisfaction. Outside, Wolf Pine settled into its winter night, snow muffling the sounds of life and gossip. Inside, Clara Roan sat by her fire, planning war with needle and thread. The fire had died to embers when the pounding came again. Clara jerked awake from where she dozed against the wall, her neck stiff, her dress still damp despite hours by the hearth. Gray morning light filtered through frost-etched windows. "Open up, or I'm coming in anyway." Not Dale's voice. She recognized the rumble Jonah Maddox, the man who owned this shelter she'd claimed. Clara stood, joints protesting, and smoothed her wrinkled skirts before opening the door. He filled the doorframe, snow dusting his shoulders and the brim of his hat. Behind him, a packhorse stood loaded with supplies. His eyes took in her disheveled state, the dead fire, the empty room. Still alive, then disappointed. A corner of his mouth twitched. "Would have been inconvenient. I brought supplies." He brushed past her, carrying a bundle. From it, he produced a coffee pot, a bag of grounds, hardtack, and jerky. Basic trail food. But Clara's stomach clenched at the sight. She'd eaten nothing since yesterday's noon stage stop. "I can't pay you," she said. "Didn't ask you to." He knelt by the fireplace, rebuilding the fire with practiced efficiency. "Consider it protecting my property value. Frozen corpses are hard to explain to buyers." Clara bristled. "I'm not some helpless." "No." He looked up at her, those winter sky eyes unreadable. "Helpless women don't face down a man who wronged them in front of half the town. Heard you call Dale Hartley small in every way that matters." Heat flooded her cheeks. "News travels fast." "Like wildfire in a drought." He turned back to the fire. "Made Virgil Peck laugh so hard he bought a round for the saloon. Course, Virgil hates Dale, so that helped." Soon the coffee pot bubbled on a grate over the flames. The smell alone nearly brought Clara to her knees. Jonah produced 2 tin cups from his bundle, filled both, and handed her one without ceremony. She wrapped her hands around the warmth, pride warring with need. "Why are you helping me?" "I'm not." He settled back on his heels, cup cradled in his large hands. "I'm checking on my property, making sure squatters don't burn it down." "I'm not a squatter. You gave me the key." "To lock up when you leave." They drank in silence. The coffee was strong enough to strip paint, but Clara had never tasted anything finer. Slowly, feeling returned to her fingers and toes. "The minister's wife," she said finally. You mentioned she takes in mending. Sometimes, but she's Dale's mother-in-law now. Might not be inclined to help. Clara's jaw tightened. I'll convince her. With what your charm? He said it flat, not mocking but matter of fact. This isn't St. Louis. Women here don't break with their own, especially not for outsiders who came to steal their sons-in-law. I didn't come to steal anything. I came because he asked. She cut herself off. No point explaining to this stranger. I need work. I'm good at what I do. Jonah studied her over his cup. Can you prove it? Clara set down her coffee and retrieved her satchel. From it, she pulled a man's shirt, one she'd made for her father, but brought to show Dale her skill. The stitching was invisible, the collar perfectly turned, the buttonholes works of art. Jonah examined it with surprising care, running a thumb over the seams. You made this last month. He handed it back. I might have work. My ranch hands are hard on their clothes, always need mending. Hope flared in her chest. I could... But you can't stay here. He stood, towering over her, even with her uncommon height. This house isn't winterized. No wood laid in. Pumps likely frozen. Chimney needs cleaning. You'd be dead in a week. The hope died as quickly as it had risen. Then where? That's your problem to solve. He moved to the door, then paused. There's an old tack room in Wilson's stable. He might let you stay if you mucked stalls. Not suitable for a lady, but then neither is freezing to death. He left before she could respond. Clara stood in the empty house, holding her perfect shirt, coffee cooling in the cup. A tack room, mucking stalls. Her sisters would die of shame if they knew. But her sisters were warm in their husbands' houses, with their small, delicate hands and their small, delicate lives. Clara packed her satchel, banked the fire, and locked the door behind her. Wilson's stable sat on the far edge of town, a sprawling building that smelled of horses and hay. She found the proprietor in a stall, doctoring a mare's hoof, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained whiskers and suspicious eyes. Help you? So, Mr. Wilson Jonah Maddox suggested you might have space to rent in exchange for work. Wilson straightened, spat tobacco juice into the straw. The jilted bride. Heard about you. Clara kept her face neutral. I need shelter. I'm willing to work for it. Ever mucked a stall? No, but I can learn. Ever handled horses? I can learn that too. He laughed, showing brown teeth. City woman like you'd quit first day. Try me. Something in her tone made him look closer. Maybe he saw the desperation she couldn't quite hide, or maybe he just enjoyed the thought of watching a city woman fail. Either way, he jerked his head toward the back of the stable. The tack room's back there. Leak in the roof I ain't fixed, and mice in the walls. You keep the stalls clean, feed and water the horses morning and night. You can stay, start tomorrow, before dawn. Clara found the room barely larger than a closet, with a narrow cot, a pot-bellied stove, and hooks for tack covering every wall. Mouse droppings dotted the floor. Water stains spread across the ceiling. It smelled of leather and mold. She'd slept in worse, those first years after Mother died, when Father drank away his earnings and Clara took in piecework to keep her sisters fed. She spent the afternoon making the space livable, swept out the mice nests, stuffed rags in the holes, scrubbed every surface with water from the horse trough, found a discarded horse blanket to supplement the thin mattress. By evening, it was clean if not comfortable. Her stomach reminded her she'd eaten only hardtack since yesterday. The $12 in her pocket needed to last until she found real work. She ventured to McMurray's general store, steeling herself for stares and whispers. The store was crowded with late afternoon shoppers. Conversations died when she entered. Every eye tracked her movement to the counter where a thin woman with sharp features presided. Help you? The woman's tone suggested she'd rather not. Flour, beans, a bit of bacon, whatever $1 will buy. The woman Mrs. McMurray presumably sniffed. Don't extend credit to transients. I didn't ask for credit. Clara placed a silver dollar on the counter. Letting it ring, Mrs. McMurray took her time measuring out meager portions. Around them, the whispers started. Told her the house was his. Throwing herself at him in the blacksmith's. Probably no better than she should be. Clara kept her eyes on the counter, her spine straight. Let them talk. She'd survived worse than small-town gossip. A hand touched her elbow. She turned to find a woman about her age, plain-faced but kind-eyed, holding a baby on her hip. You're the seamstress from St. Louis. Clara nodded warily. I'm Martha Doyle. My husband runs the feed store. She shifted the baby, glanced around at the watching faces, then leaned closer. I've got a christening gown needs hemming. My mother-in-law's coming from Denver, and I'm no hand with a needle. Could you? Yes, Clara said it quickly, before the woman could change her mind. When do you need it? Sunday next. I could pay $2. $2. It would take an hour's work at most. Bring it by Wilson's stable. I'm staying in the tack room. Martha's face showed what she thought of those accommodations, but she nodded. I'll come tomorrow. She hurried away before association with Clara could taint her, but it was a start. Clara carried her provisions back to the stable as darkness fell. In her tack room, she lit the lamp and laid out her sewing kit. Tomorrow she'd shovel horse droppings. Tonight she'd plan. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Jonah Maddox holding a bundle. Heard you took Wilson's offer. He handed her the bundle, a heavy wool blanket, and a small sack. Coffee. The blanket's worn but warm. I don't need charity. No, you need customers. He pulled a torn shirt from his coat. This needs mending. So do 6 others back at my ranch. I'll pay fair wages. Clara examined the shirt. Quality wool, badly torn at the shoulder. Bare. Barbed wire, new invention, devil's own creation. He named a price more than fair for the work. I'll need the others brought here. I don't have a horse. I'll send my foreman in a few days. He turned to go, then looked back. Why didn't you just go home? Pride's a cold bedfellow. Clara met his eyes steadily. Why didn't you just leave me in your empty house? Kindness is bad for business. That almost smile touched his mouth again. Touché, Miss Roan. After he left, Clara allowed herself a moment of something close to hope. One customer openly, one in secret. Maybe she could survive this after all. She wrapped herself in the wool blanket. It smelled of horses and leather and something else. Something masculine and oddly comforting, and began mending Jonah Maddox's shirt by lamplight. Each stitch was perfect, precise, a tiny rebellion against the chaos of the last 2 days. Outside, snow began to fall again, muffling the sounds of wolf pine settling into night. But in the tack room, Clara's needle flashed in and out, building something from nothing, the way women always had. The rooster hadn't even crowed when Clara's body reminded her of yesterday's labor. Every muscle screamed as she rolled from the narrow cot, her hands blistered and raw from the pitchfork. 3 days of mucking stalls, and she moved like an old woman. But Martha Doyle's christening gown hung perfect on its hook, ready for delivery. And beside it, Jonah Maddox's mended shirt, every stitch invisible. Small victories in her war of survival. She pulled on her one clean dress, the other still drying from yesterday's washing, and ventured into the pre-dawn cold. The horses nickered softly as she moved among them, measuring oats, breaking ice from water troughs. Her movements had grown smoother, less likely to spook them. The bay mare even nuzzled her shoulder now, seeking the carrot ends Clara saved from her meager meals. Morning, Buttercup. She stroked the velvet nose. At least someone in this town likes me. Talking to horses now, first sign of madness, they say. Clara spun. Mrs. McMurray stood in the stable entrance, wrapped in a fine wool cloak, carrying a package. Mrs. McMurray, the store doesn't open for hours. I'm not here for the store. The woman stepped closer. her sharp features pinched with distaste at the surroundings. "I have business. Private business." Clara waited. "Mrs." McMurray thrust the package at her. "My daughter's wedding dress needs taking in. She's smaller than expected when we ordered it from Chicago." "A wedding dress?" Clara's hands tightened on the package. "When is the wedding?" 2 months, but I need to know you can handle delicate work. This isn't some ranch hand's shirt." Clara unwrapped the dress carefully. Ivory silk, French lace, tiny pearl buttons down the back. The kind of dress she'd dreamed of wearing herself. Once upon a time. The kind Dale's delicate new wife probably wore. "I can handle it. Without ruining it, without telling the whole town I came here." There was the rub. Mrs. McMurray needed her skills but couldn't acknowledge it publicly. Clara was good enough for secret work, hidden away like a shameful necessity. My work speaks for itself. As for discretion. Clara rewrapped the dress. "That depends on your terms." "Mrs." McMurray's eyes narrowed. "Don't get above yourself, girl." "I'm not a girl. I'm a businesswoman. You need what I can do, or you wouldn't be here before dawn." Clara kept her voice level. "I'll take in the dress for $10. 5 now, 5 on delivery, and I'll need proper thread from your store on account. $10 highway robbery. Chicago prices for Chicago quality." Clara held out the package. "Or you could send it back to Chicago. Wait another 3 months. Hope it comes back right." They stared at each other. Clara had learned. These past days. That desperation gave its own kind of strength. She had nothing left to lose. "Mrs." McMurray pulled bills from her purse. 5 now, and you'll get thread. Nothing more. If anyone asks, you stole it." "If anyone asks, I've never seen this dress." After the woman left, Clara sat on a hay bale, shaking. $10. Enough for 2 weeks' food and then some. Enough to start saving for where would she go? Back to St. Louis with her tail between her legs. Further west to California. She pushed the thoughts away. First, survive today. Tomorrow could tend itself. The sun climbed higher, bringing warmth and customers. Martha Doyle came for her christening gown, eyes widening at the perfect hem. She paid promptly and mentioned her sister needed help with curtains. Wilson appeared, grumbling about the clean stalls but unable to find fault. He dumped a pile of torn harnesses by her door. "If you can fix these, might knock $1 off your rent." Even the horses seemed to accept her now. She'd learned their names, their moods, which ones kicked and which ones gentled under a firm hand. Strange how quickly this had become routine, the smell of hay and manure, the soft wickers and stamping hooves, the ache in her back that meant she'd earned her keep. Late afternoon brought familiar boot steps. Clara didn't look up from the harness she was mending. "Mr. Maddox?" "Miss Roan." He filled the doorway of her small room. "Brought those shirts I mentioned." 6 shirts, all work-worn but quality. She examined each, cataloging repairs needed. 3 days' work, maybe 4. Fair enough. He watched her hands as she sorted the shirts. "Wilson says you're not as useless as he expected." "High praise." From Wilson extremely. He leaned against the doorframe. "Also heard Eliza McMurray was sneaking around before dawn." Clara kept her eyes on the shirts. "Town this small. Everyone hears everything." "Not everything. Sometimes people keep secrets. Sometimes that's wiser." She looked up then, met those winter sky eyes. Speaking from experience. "Every man has secrets. Miss Roan, even in Wolf Pine." He straightened. "I'll be back Friday for the shirts. Earlier if you need anything." "Why would I need anything?" "Because Dale Hartley's been drinking at the saloon, telling anyone who'll listen how you threw yourself at him, how he had to reject your advances, how his new wife needs protection from your jealousy." Ice formed in Clara's chest. "That's not—" "I know." He said it simply, like stating the weather. Anyone with eyes knows, but hurt pride makes men stupid. Just be careful. He left before she could respond. Clara sat among the shirts and harnesses, anger building like a prairie fire. Dale Hartley, that weak, lying little man. Wasn't it enough he'd humiliated her? Now he had to poison the town against her too. She stabbed her needle through leather with more force than necessary. Each stitch became a small act of violence against Dale's lies. She'd survived despite him, build something from nothing while he hid behind his delicate wife's skirts. Evening brought an unexpected visitor, a young woman, barely 20, with tired eyes and worn clothes. She clutched a bundle of fabric. "Are you the seamstress?" "I am. I'm Lucy Turner. I work at the—" She flushed. "The saloon, dancing and such. Nothing improper," she added quickly. "Just dancing, but my costume needs mending, and I can't, the other women in town won't." "I understand." Clara took the bundle, bright satin and spangles, torn at the seams. "When do you need it?" "Tomorrow night, I can pay." Lucy produced coins, clearly hard saved. "Please, it's all I have to earn with—" Clara thought of the proper women who'd sneer at Lucy's coins, of Dale calling her unsuitable, of everyone deciding what kind of woman deserved help and what kind didn't. "Come back tomorrow afternoon. It'll be ready." Lucy's face lit up. Thank you so much." After she left, Clara worked by lamplight. First the wedding dress, each stitch precise as surgery. Then Lucy's costume, making the repairs stronger than the original. 2 women's hopes hanging on her needle, one hiding her need, one scorning judgment. Near midnight, a sound made her look up, scratching at the door. She opened it carefully to find a bundle on the ground bread, cheese, a small pot of jam. No note, but she recognized the cloth wrapping. Martha Doyle's kitchen towels. Kindness, delivered in darkness. It seemed to be the only kind this town allowed. Clara brought the food inside and returned to her work. Her back ached. Her fingers bled from countless pricks. But the wedding dress began to transform. Each tuck and dart reshaped it from Chicago expectations to Montana reality. Beautiful still, but practical too. Like surviving, like starting over. She thought of Dale's new wife, delicate Alice, needing protection. Did she know her husband was a liar? Did she care? Or was being delicate and protected worth any price? Clara held up the dress, ivory silk catching the lamplight. She'd worn her mother's wedding dress once, playing as a child. Her sisters had laughed too tall, too broad, too much for such a fragile thing. She'd never tried it on again. Now she held another woman's dream, reshaping it with bleeding fingers in a stable that stank of horses. But she was warm, fed, earning her way, building something that couldn't be stolen by lying letters or weak men's pride. The dress whispered as she folded it carefully. Tomorrow she'd deliver Lucy's costume, continue the harnesses, start Jonah's shirts. Word would spread, quietly, woman to woman. The seamstress in the stable. Good work, discreet, doesn't judge. It wasn't the life she'd imagined on those long nights in St. Louis, reading Dale's promises by candlelight, but it was hers. Earned with blistered hands and perfect stitches, built from nothing but skill and stubborn pride. The mice scuttled in the walls. Wind rattled the loose board she'd been meaning to fix. Somewhere in town, Dale Hartley slept beside his delicate wife in the house that should have been Clara's. Let him, she had work to do. The needle flashed in and out, steady as a heartbeat, writing Clara's Declaration of Independence one stitch at a time. She would not be broken by this place. She would not run. She would survive, and that would be its own revenge. When dawn finally came, the wedding dress hung perfect. Lucy's costume sparkled, and 3 of Jonah's shirts waited ready. Clara's hands were steady despite the long night, her back straight despite the ache. She was still standing. The thaw came early that March, turning Wolf Pine streets to rivers of mud. Clara had been in the stable for 6 weeks now, her hands hardened to leather, her reputation quietly growing. The tack room had transformed under her care, clean curtains she'd sewn from feed sacks, a rag rug to warm the floor, herbs drying from the rafters to mask the stable smell. She was hanging fresh washing when Jonah Maddox appeared, leading a horse with a torn saddle. Another repair. She dried her hands on her apron. Of a sort. He tied the horse and hefted the saddle. This needs more than mending. Thought you might know upholstery. Clara examined the damaged leather worn through to the tree, padding compressed beyond use. I can repad it, recover the seat, but I'll need materials. Got leather at the ranch? Good stuff. He paused. You'd need to come out, though. Can't haul a whole hide to town. Leave the safety of her established routine, travel alone with a man to his ranch. The town gossips would feast for weeks. I know what you're thinking. Jonah's voice held no judgment. But my foreman's wife will be there. Sarah Fisher. She's been wanting to meet the woman who fixed her husband's winter coat so well he won't stop talking about it. Clara had mended Tom Fisher's coat last week, a complicated repair that required taking the whole lining out. She'd charged fair price and done work worth double. When? Tomorrow. If weather holds, I'll send a wagon at dawn. After he left, Clara stood in her small domain, weighing risks against opportunity. A ranch job could lead to more cowboys always needed mending, and ranch wives often wanted fine sewing. But leaving town, even briefly, felt like stepping off solid ground. That evening, Lucy Turner stopped by with payment for her latest costume repair and news from the saloon. Dale Hartley was in again last night, deep in his cups, complaining about his wife. Lucy lowered her voice. Says she cries all the time. Won't leave the house. The marriage ain't what he expected. Clara felt no satisfaction at this news, only a weary kind of pity. Poor girl. Poor nothing. She made her bed. Lucy's face hardened. You're the one got left standing in the cold. Least you're making something of yourself. All she's making is tears. That night, Clara prepared carefully for the ranch visit. Clean dress, her best sewing kit, professional demeanor firmly in place. She'd give the gossips nothing to work with. The wagon came as promised, driven by Tom Fisher himself, a weathered man with kind eyes who helped her up without comment. The ride took 2 hours through countryside, just shaking off winter's grip. Prairie stretched endless, broken by coulees and the distant smudge of mountains. The Maddox Ranch sprawled across a valley. Buildings clustered like a small-town main house. Bunkhouse, barns, corrals, horses dotted the pastures, and the whole operation spoke of careful management and prosperity. Big spread, Clara observed. Mr. Maddox runs near 1,000 head, supplies cavalry mounts to Fort Benton. Tom pulled up near the main house. Sarah's waiting inside. She's excited to meet you. Sarah Fisher proved to be a cheerful woman near Clara's age, flour dusting her apron and genuine welcome in her smile. The famous seamstress Tom hasn't shut up about that coat. Come in, come in. Coffee's hot. The kitchen was large and warm, smelling of bread and leather polish. Through the windows, Clara could see men working horses in the corral. Jonah stood among them, tall and easy in his element. He's a good boss, Sarah said, following her gaze. Fair. Expects hard work, but pays well. Been running this place alone since his partner died 3 years back. No wife? The question slipped out before Clara could stop it. Sarah's expression grew careful. Was engaged once. Girl from Billings. But she took one look at ranch life and ran back to Daddy. Some women aren't built for this country. Clara thought of Dale's delicate wife, crying in town. No, some aren't. Jonah appeared in the doorway, hat in hand. Mrs. Fisher, Miss Roan, ready to look at that leather? He led her to a workshop attached to the barn, neat as everything else on the ranch. Leather hides hung from beams, tools arranged precisely on benches. The damaged saddle waited on a stand. Take what you need. He gestured to the materials. I've got 3 more saddles need work if this one turns out well. Clara ran her hands over the leather, selecting pieces by feel. Quality stuff. Well tanned and supple. She could already see how she'd reshape the seat, reinforce the wear points. You know leather. It wasn't a question. My father was a cobbler before he took to drink. I learned young. She hadn't meant to say that last part. Something about this workshop, these materials, pulled truth from her. Useful skill. Jonah watched her work, cutting patterns with sure strokes. Your talents were wasted in St. Louis. My talents were wasted on correspondence with liars. He almost smiled. That too. They worked in companionable silence. Clara cut and shaped while Jonah mended other tack nearby. The barn cats wound around their legs. Horses nickered from the stalls. It felt like sanctuary, this purposeful quiet. Can I ask something? Clara kept her eyes on her work. Why did you help me that first night, really? Jonah's hand stilled on the bridle he was cleaning. You reminded me of someone. Your fiancé. A short laugh. God, no. Catherine wouldn't have lasted an hour in that cold house. Would have wired Daddy for rescue before the sun set. He resumed cleaning. My sister, Anne, she had your way of standing straight when the world tried to bend her. Had? Died having her 3rd baby. Husband remarried within the month. His voice stayed level, but Clara heard the old anger underneath. Anne deserved better. Most women do. They returned to silence, but it felt different now, weighted with understanding. Clara had the saddle stripped and ready for padding when commotion erupted outside. Shouts, running feet, a woman's scream. Jonah dropped the bridle and ran. Clara followed. In the yard, a crowd gathered around a wagon. A young woman lay in the bed, heavily pregnant, face twisted in pain. Her husband, barely older than a boy, stood wringing his hands. Baby's coming wrong. Someone said, Doc's in Billings. Midwife's down with fever. Jonah took charge. Get her inside. Sarah. Hot water. Tom. Ride for Mrs. Olson. Fever or no. He turned, saw Clara. You know anything about birthing? I helped deliver my sister's babies. 7 between them. Not all survived, but she'd learned. I need clean sheets, string, sharp scissors. They carried the girl, Mrs. Harper, someone said into the house. Clara washed her hands with lye soap, pushed aside her fears. A breach, by the feel of it. She'd seen worse. What's your name? She kept her voice calm. Ellen, it hurts so bad. I know, but we're going to help you and your baby. Trust me. For the next 2 hours, Clara fought for 2 lives. She turned the baby by feel and faith, talked Ellen through the pains, ignored the blood and mess. Sarah proved steady help. Jonah kept the husband from fainting. When the baby finally came, a squalling boy with his mother's nose, Clara nearly wept with relief. She cleaned him, checked him over, placed him in Ellen's arms. He's perfect, Ellen whispered. Course he is. Clara was blood-stained and exhausted, but smiling. He's got a fighter for a mother. Later, after the Harpers were settled and the excitement died down, Clara found herself on the porch with Jonah, watching sunset paint the mountains. You saved them, he said quietly. I did what was needed. Most people don't. Most people stand back and wring their hands. He looked at her, really looked, as if seeing past the rough dress and stable smell to something deeper. Thank you. Heat crept up her neck. I should get back. The horses need feeding. Stay for supper, Sarah insists. Says a woman who delivers babies shouldn't go home to an empty room and cold beans. Clara hesitated. Staying meant more talk, more speculation. But she was tired, and the kitchen smelled like pot roast. And for once she wanted to feel part of something good. All right. Supper was lively ranch hands telling stories. Sarah fussing over everyone. Baby Harper's cries from upstairs, proof of life continuing. Clara found herself laughing at Tom's tale of a horse that learned to open gates. Smart as a fox, that one. Had to put a padlock on his stall. Should have seen Miss Roan today. Jonah said, "Turn that baby neat as you please, cool as Winter Creek water." Clara flushed at the praise. Anyone would have... No? Ellen's husband stood in the doorway, hat in hand. Not anyone. Doc Henderson told us last month there might be trouble. Said we should go to Billings when time came, but the baby came early. And you... His voice broke. You saved my family. Miss Roan, I won't forget. The ride back to town passed in comfortable quiet. Tom Fisher hummed tunelessly. Clara watched stars emerge in the darkening sky. Her dress was ruined, her hair a mess, but she felt more herself than she had in months. At the stable, Tom helped her down. You did good today, Miss Real Good. Inside, her little room waited unchanged, but Clara felt different, larger somehow, as if delivering Ellen Harper's baby had delivered something in herself to a certainty that she belonged here as much as anyone. She lit her lamp and unwrapped the leather pieces Jonah had insisted she take. Tomorrow she'd start the saddle properly. Word would spread about today, the seamstress who could deliver babies, who didn't panic, who did what was needed. Let Dale Hartley tell his stories in the saloon. Clara had better tales to build written in leather and thread and life itself. Word of the Harper baby spread through Wolf Pine like wildfire. By week's end, Clara had delivered 3 more babies, set a broken arm, and somehow become the person folks called when the doctor was gone. She hadn't asked for it, but crisis didn't wait for permission. The spring social at the church was the first real test of her changed standing. Clara stood before her small mirror, wearing the one good dress she'd finally finished deep blue wool that brought out her eyes, fitted properly to her tall frame. No hiding, no apologizing for taking up space. You clean up nice, Lucy Turner said from the doorway. She'd stopped by to borrow thread but stayed to watch Clara prepare. Gonna shake up those church hens tonight? I'm going for the supper, not to shake anyone up. Sure you are. Lucy grinned. That why you're taking such care with your hair? Clara's hand stilled on the pins. Truth was, she didn't know why she was trying so hard. Maybe because for the first time since arriving, she had something to prove besides mere survival. The church hall blazed with lanterns, packed with families in their Sunday best. Conversations faltered when Clara entered. She lifted her chin, found Martha Doyle's kind face, and made her way over. Clara, how lovely you look. Martha squeezed her hand. Come, you must meet my sister. She's visiting from Denver and needs advice on curtains. For an hour, Clara circulated carefully, talking fabrics and stitching, accepting cautious welcomes from women who'd secretly hired her. The men mostly ignored her, which suited fine. She was reaching for a cup of cider when a familiar voice froze her spine. Well, the stable seamstress cleans up after all. Dale Hartley stood behind her, whiskey on his breath despite the church setting. His pretty wife wasn't with him home with another headache. Someone whispered, Mr. Hartley. Clara kept her voice neutral, aware of the watching crowd. Heard you've been busy playing doctor now, too. His smile was mean. Always did think too highly of yourself. Some things don't change. No, Clara agreed. Some men remain small no matter what. His face flushed. You need to learn your place. Woman. This isn't St. Louis. We don't tolerate... Dale. Jonah Maddox appeared at Clara's elbow, solid and calm. Your wife's looking for you. Something about needing to go home. Dale's jaw worked. He wanted to make a scene. Clara could see it, but Jonah stood there like a wall, and people were watching. And even Dale Hartley knew better than to cross the man who supplied half the county's horses. This isn't over, Dale muttered, then stalked away. Clara released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Thank you. He's been drinking since noon. Tom Fisher saw him at the saloon. Jonah's hand brushed her elbow, guiding her away from the crowd. You all right? Fine. I've handled worse than Dale Hartley. I know. Something in how he said it made her look up. He was watching her with that steady gaze, the one that seemed to see straight through to her spine. Dance with me. People will talk. People always talk. Question is whether we let them decide our lives. The fiddler was starting a reel. Couples moved onto the floor. Clara thought of all the reasons she should refuse the gossip, the impropriety, the complications. Then she thought of Dale's sneer, of hiding in her tack room, of making herself small to avoid notice. All right. Jonah led her onto the floor with the same quiet confidence he did everything. His hand was warm and calloused against hers. He danced like he rode smooth, controlled, surprisingly graceful for such a large man. You're full of surprises, Mr. Maddox. As are you, Miss Roan. He spun her, brought her back. Most women would have crumbled after what you've been through. You built a business instead. I did what was necessary. No, necessary would have been taking the stage home. You did what was brave. The compliment caught her off guard. She missed a step, stumbled slightly. His arm steadied her, held a moment longer than proper. Around them, she felt the weight of watching eyes, the whispers building. They're all staring, she murmured. Let them. His voice was low, meant only for her. You've earned your place here, through skill and grit and helping folks when they needed it. Anyone who can't see that is blind. The dance ended. Jonah released her properly, formally, but his eyes held hers an extra heartbeat. Then someone called his name about a horse trade, and he was gone, leaving Clara oddly bereft. She made her excuses soon after, needing air and space to think. The walk back to the stable was cool and quiet, but as she approached, she saw light spilling from her room's door, which she definitely locked. Clara grabbed a pitchfork from the wall, crept closer, through the cracked door. She could see someone pawing through her things. Dale Hartley, drunk and clumsy, rifling through her sewing basket. Anger, white-hot and cleansing, flooded her chest. She kicked the door wide. Get out! Dale spun, swaying. There you are. Thought you'd be dancing all night with Maddox, making a fool of yourself. The only fool here is you, breaking into my room like a common thief. Your room? He laughed. Ugly. A tack room in a stable. You really have come down in the world, haven't you? And now throwing yourself at Maddox? He stepped closer. But he doesn't really want you, just pities you. Everyone does. Clara's grip tightened on the pitchfork. Get out! Or what you'll stick me like a hay bale. He reached for her. She swung the handle, catching him hard in the stomach. He doubled over, gasping. You crazy. I said, get out. She held the pitchfork ready. And if you come near me again, I'll show you just how crazy a woman can be when pushed too far. Dale scrambled backward, slipped in the doorway, went down hard in the stable muck. He came up sputtering, covered in filth. You'll regret this, he snarled. No, I regret believing your letters. I regret coming here for you. But this, she gestured with the pitchfork. This is the first thing I've done in Wolf Pine I won't regret at all. He fled, cursing. Clara barred the door behind him, then sank onto her cot, shaking, not with fear, with rage and relief and something like triumph. She'd defended herself, stood her ground, refused to be victimized. A soft knock came minutes later. Miss Roan, it's Tom Fisher. Saw Hartley running off looking like he'd tangled with a bull. You all right? She opened the door. Tom stood there with his wife and Jonah, concern on all their faces. I'm fine. Dale broke in. I encouraged him to leave. With the pitchfork, Tom eyed the tool still in her hand. The handle only, though I was tempted by the other end. Sarah Fisher laughed. Good for you. That man's been cruising for a bruising, as my PA would say. He'll make trouble. Jonah said quietly. Men like Dale don't take humiliation well.
Let him try.
Clara was surprised to find she meant it. I'm done being afraid of small men and their smaller minds. The Fishers headed home, but Jonah lingered. You sure you're all right?
Yes.
She looked at him in the lantern light.
Thank you. For the dance. For checking on me. For...
She struggled for words.
For seeing me as more than the town scandal.
That's not what I see at all. He stepped closer. I see a woman who delivers babies and mends saddles and faces down bullies with farm tools. I see someone who makes tough choices and stands by them. What else do you see? The question escaped before wisdom could catch it. His hand rose, brushed a loose strand of hair from her face.
Someone I'd like to know better, if she's willing.
Clara's breath caught. This was dangerous territory. The town already gossiped about them. Getting involved with Jonah would only fuel the fire. But standing there in the lamplight, his fingers gentle against her cheek, she found she didn't care. I might be willing, she whispered. He smiled then, rare and transforming. Good. Come to Sunday dinner at the ranch. Sarah's making pot roast. Jonah, she pulled back slightly. People will assume things. Let them assume. I know the truth. You know it. That's what matters. He headed for the door, paused. Bar this behind me. And Clara, next time someone needs running off, send word. I'm good with discouragements. After he left, Clara sat in her little kingdom, sorting through the evening's events. She'd been humiliated by Dale, defended by Jonah, accepted by some, rejected by others. But through it all, she'd stood tall, fought back, chosen her own path. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Dale would spread his poison. The town would buzz with fresh scandal. But tonight, Clara Roan had danced in a blue dress she'd made herself, faced down her past with a pitchfork, and been truly seen by a good man. She picked up the Harper baby's christening gown she'd been embroidering, settled by the lamp, and set her needle to work. Each stitch was sure and strong, building something beautiful from simple thread and fabric, like her life here, like whatever was growing between her and Jonah. The mice rustled in the walls, horses stamped in their stalls, but Clara's corner of the stable felt less like exile now and more like the beginning of something new, something chosen, something hers. The aftermath of the church social rippled through Wolf Pine like stones in still water. By morning, Clara had heard 3 different versions of her encounter with Dale, each more dramatic than the last. She kept her head high, went about her work, and let the gossips tire themselves out. Sunday arrived crisp and bright. Clara dressed carefully for dinner at the ranch, choosing her brown traveling dress, respectable but not trying too hard. She was adjusting her collar when Lucy appeared with news. Dale's wife left him. Lucy bounced on her toes with excitement. Took the early stage back to her parents. The whole town's buzzing. Poor girl. Clara meant it. Alice Brennan Hartley had been a pawn in Dale's games, too. Poor nothing. She made her choice. Lucy's face softened. Just like you're making yours. That Jonah Maddox is good people. Clara, don't let fear keep you from something real. The ride to the ranch felt different this time. Tom Fisher kept up cheerful chatter, but Clara's nerves hummed. This wasn't business. This was... What courtship? The word felt strange, old-fashioned, too hopeful. The ranch bustled with Sunday energy. Cowboys cleaned up and shaved, gathered on the porch swapping stories. They touched their hats when Clara passed, respectful now where they'd once been curious. Inside, Sarah Fisher commanded the kitchen while ranch hands drifted in and out, stealing biscuits. Jonah stood by the window, deep in conversation with his foreman about spring breeding. He looked up when Clara entered, and something in his expression made her pulse skip. Miss Roan, glad you could come.
Wouldn't miss Sarah's pot roast,
she said lightly, aware of the watching eyes. Dinner was a lively affair. 20 people crowded around the long table ranch hands, their families, a few neighbors. Clara found herself seated between Sarah and a grizzled cowboy named Murphy, who regaled her with tales of wild horses. Caught a Mustang once, pretty as paint, but wild to the bone. Some creatures ain't meant for taming. He winked. Course, the right hand can gentle even the wildest heart. Across the table, Jonah caught her eye, amused. After dinner, while the women cleared and the men smoked on the porch, Clara found herself washing dishes beside Sarah. Through the window, she could see children playing in the yard, their laughter bright as birdsong.
He's different since you came,
Sarah said quietly. Jonah. Been alone too long.
Oh, he had offers rancher like him. Women practically threw themselves at his door. But after Catherine,
Sarah dried a plate thoughtfully.
He closed off, decided wanting someone meant giving them power to hurt you.
Clara understood that. Hadn't she done the same after Dale's betrayal?
What changed?
Sarah smiled.
You did.
Woman who faces down the world with a pitchfork, who delivers babies in men's leather and refuses to be small. You reminded him that strength can be soft too. Before Clara could respond, commotion erupted outside. Riders approaching fast, voices raised in urgency. Everyone spilled onto the porch to see 3 men on lathered horses, neighbors from the Double Bar Ranch.
Fire, one gasped. Barn caught, spreading to the house. Need every hand.
The transformation was instant. Jonah took charge, sending riders for water barrels, organizing a bucket brigade. Within minutes, half the ranch emptied as men rode hard for the Double Bar.
I can help,
Clara said. Jonah paused, saddling his horse. It's dangerous. So is childbirth. I manage that fine. He studied her, then nodded. Can you ride?
Well enough.
He saddled a gentle mare, helped her mount.
Stay close to Sarah. Do what she says.
The ride was hard and fast, Clara clinging to the saddle horn. By the time they reached Double Bar, the barn was fully engulfed, flames licking toward the main house. A bucket brigade had formed, but they were losing ground.
The quilts,
the rancher's wife cried.
Soak the quilts. Hang them on the house walls.
Clara understood immediately. Wet cloth wouldn't burn easily, could shield the wooden walls. She and Sarah raced inside, gathering every blanket and quilt they could find. Other women joined them, dunking the heavy fabric in water barrels, hanging them like armor against the flames. For hours they fought. Clara's dress soaked through, her hands blistered from wringing wet cloth. Smoke burned her throat, but she kept going, part of something larger than herself. Near midnight, the wind shifted. The fire, robbed of easy fuel by the wet barriers, began to die. The barn was lost, but the house stood. Exhausted cheers went up from the crowd. Clara found herself sitting on the porch steps, too tired to stand. Someone pressed a cup of water into her hands. Jonah, she realized. His face was soot-streaked, shirt singed. You all right? She nodded, drinking gratefully. Around them, people collapsed where they stood, united by exhaustion and victory. The rancher's wife moved among them, tears streaming as she thanked each person. You saved our home, she said to Clara.
The quilts, I never would have thought.
We all saved it, Clara corrected. Together. The ride back was slow, people too tired for speed. Clara dozed against the mare's neck, trusting the horse to follow the others. She woke to gentle hands lifting her down.
Easy.
Jonah's arms steadied her.
You're about done in.
I can walk. But her legs buckled, without asking. He swept her up, carried her into the house. She should protest, but her head fit perfectly against his shoulder. He set her in the kitchen chair. Sarah appeared with basin and cloth, clucking like a mother hen as she cleaned Clara's soot-stained face.
Look at you, ruined your dress, singed your hair. What would your St. Louis friends think?
They'd think I'd lost my mind. Clara smiled wearily. They'd be right. No, Jonah knelt to examine her blistered hands. They'd be wrong. This is sanity people helping people, building something together. His fingers were impossibly gentle on her burns. Clara watched him work, this big man who commanded respect through quiet strength rather than bluster, who saw her not as scandal or charity, but as someone capable and necessary.
I should go,
she said softly.
It's late. People will talk. People are too tired to talk.
But he helped her stand. Tom will drive you back. At the door, he caught her arm.
Clara, you did good tonight. Real good.
The way he said her name soft, careful, like something precious, made her throat tight. On the ride back, Tom was quiet, respecting her exhaustion. But as they reached the stable, he spoke.
Seen a lot of women come west. Most fold up like paper in rain. You're different.
Different how? You bend but don't break. Jonah sees it. We all do. He helped her down.
Don't know what that fool Hartley was thinking, passing you by. His loss is Wolf Pine's gain.
In her room, Clara peeled off her ruined dress, washed as best she could with pitcher and basin. Her hands throbbed. Her hair smelled of smoke. Every muscle ached. But underneath the exhaustion was something else. Belonging. She'd stood with the town tonight, fought beside them, been accepted not as the abandoned bride, but as someone who pulled her weight when needed. She thought of Jonah's hands on hers, his voice saying her name. Dangerous thoughts, complicating thoughts. But after tonight, she couldn't pretend he was just another customer. Couldn't pretend she didn't feel the pull between them. A soft knock interrupted her musings. She wrapped her shawl tight, opened the door to find Martha Doyle with a basket.
Thought you might need this.
Martha unpacked salve, clean bandages, fresh bread, and cheese. Heard what you did tonight. The quilts were brilliant. It was nothing.
It was something. It was community.
Martha smiled.
You're one of us now, Clara, like it or not.
After she left, Clara sat on her cot, spreading salve on her burns.
One of us.
The words felt like a gift she hadn't known she needed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Her hands would make sewing difficult for days. The gossips would have fresh fuel about her and Jonah. And Dale, nursing his wounds somewhere, would likely seek new ways to cause trouble. But tonight, she'd fought fire and won. Tonight, a good man had carried her when she couldn't walk. Tonight, Wolf Pine had claimed her as its own. Clara lay back on her narrow cot, smoke still clinging to her hair, and smiled. She'd come west to be Dale Hartley's wife, to live small and grateful in his shadow. Instead, she'd found herself capable, needed, part of something larger. The mice scuttled in the walls. Wind rattled the loose board, but Clara Roan slept deep, dreaming of strong hands and soft voices, of quilts like armor and women who refused to let the world burn what they'd built. She was home. The spring rains came hard that April, turning Wolf Pine streets to soup and keeping everyone indoors. Clara's hands had healed from the fire, leaving only faint scars to mark her part in saving the Double Bar Ranch. Her business thrived despite the weather, or perhaps because of it, as people sought repairs for weather-damaged clothes and gear. She was reinforcing the seams on a canvas tent when familiar footsteps approached. She'd learned to recognize Jonah's gait steady, purposeful, never rushed. "Afternoon, Miss Roan." Mr. Maddox. She kept her eyes on her work, though her pulse quickened. He'd been by twice this week already, always with some repair needed, though she suspected half of them could have waited. "Brought you something." He set a package on her work table, brown paper tied with string. "I don't need—" "Open it." Inside lay a leather satchel, beautifully crafted with brass fittings and her initials tooled into the flap, C.R.
"My old satchel's fine,"
she said, though it wasn't. The one that had carried Dale's letters was falling apart. More patches than original leather now.
"Made it myself."
Been working on it evenings." He seemed suddenly uncertain. "Thought you should have something that wasn't connected to before." Clara ran her fingers over the smooth leather, the careful stitching. Hours of work in this gift. "It's beautiful. Like its owner." The words hung between them, too honest for the careful dance they'd been doing. Clara looked up, found him watching her with those winter sky eyes. "Jonah." "I know. Too fast. Too much talk already." He stepped back. "Just wanted you to have something made for who you are now, not who you were supposed to be." He left before she could form a response. Clara sat holding the satchel, throat tight with emotions she couldn't name. In St. Louis, men had courted her with flowers that died in days, promises that meant nothing. Here was a man who'd made her something with his own hands, who saw her future instead of her past. Lucy burst in an hour later, shaking rain from her shawl. "You'll never guess Dale Hartley's back in town." Clara's stomach clenched. "When?" "This morning, staying at the hotel, telling anyone who'll listen that his wife left because you poisoned her mind against him." Lucy's face darkened. "Man can't take responsibility for nothing." "Let him talk. Everyone knows the truth." "Do they? He's got money to spend and a silver tongue when sober. Already convinced Virgil Peck that you're trouble." Virgil Peck, who controlled credit at the general store. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She'd built so much these past months, but it could crumble quick if the wrong people turned against her. "I'll be fine," she said with more confidence than she felt. But the next morning, Mrs. McMurray refused to sell her thread on account. "Cash only for transients," she said loudly, though Clara had been good for credit for weeks now. At the bakery, the owner suddenly had no day-old bread to sell cheap. The blacksmith was too busy to repair her scissors, though his shop stood empty. "Dale's poison, spreading fast." Clara returned to her room, fighting despair. She'd worked so hard, proved herself over and over. Could one bitter man's lies undo it all? A delegation of women arrived that afternoon: Sarah Fisher, Martha Doyle, and surprisingly, Ellen Harper with her baby. "We heard what's happening," Sarah said without preamble. "Dale's trying to turn the town against you." "He's succeeding. With the men, maybe, and the fools who listen to saloon talk." Martha's eyes flashed. "But not with us." Ellen shifted her baby, looking fierce. "You saved my son's life. You think I care what Dale Hartley says?" "We've organized," Sarah continued. "Every woman who's hired you, who's seen your work, who knows your character. We're spreading our own truth. And," Martha added with satisfaction, "we're boycotting any business that refuses to serve you. See how long Virgil Peck lasts when the women won't shop at his store." Clara's eyes burned with sudden tears. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep fighting. Say you won't let that weasel run you off." Sarah gripped her hands. "You're ours now, Clara. We protect our own." After they left, Clara sat in the gathering dusk, overwhelmed by the fierce loyalty of women who'd once whispered behind her back. She was still sitting there when Wilson knocked. "Got a problem," he said gruffly. "Dale Hartley wants to buy out your lease on the tack room, offered twice what you pay." Her heart sank. Without this room, she'd have nowhere to go. "And told him to stuff his money where the sun don't shine." Wilson spat tobacco juice. "You've been a good tenant, clean, quiet, hard-working, worth more than his gold." "Wilson, don't get sentimental on me, woman. Bad for my reputation." But he patted her shoulder awkwardly before stomping away. That evening, planning her next move, Clara heard commotion in the stable yard. Jonah's voice, cold with controlled anger, and Dale's higher tones, whiskey slurred. She crept to the door, peered out. They stood near the water trough, Dale swaying on his feet, Jonah still as granite. "You're whore now. Is that it?" Dale was saying. "First she threw herself at me. Now you—" The crack of Jonah's fist against Dale's jaw was loud as a gunshot. Dale went down hard, splashing into the mud. "Say her name again," Jonah said quietly. "Give me a reason." Dale scrambled backward, hand to his bleeding mouth. "You'll regret this, Maddox. I'll ruin you both."
Try.
Jonah stepped forward. Dale flinched. "But know this Clara Roan has more worth in her little finger than you have in your whole miserable existence. She came here trusting your words and built a life from nothing when you failed her. She's got the protection of every decent person in this town, including me."
Especially you.
Dale's laugh was ugly. "Everyone knows you're sniffing around her skirts." Jonah hauled him up by the collar. "You're leaving town tomorrow, on the early stage. And if I see you near Clara again, if I hear you've spoken one word against her, I'll finish what I started. Clear?" Dale nodded frantically. Jonah dropped him back in the mud, turned, and saw Clara watching. His face changed, anger replaced by something softer.
Sorry you had to see that. I'm not.
She stepped into the yard, chin high.
Though I can fight my own battles.
I know. Seen you do it with a pitchfork. That almost smile touched his mouth. But some battles shouldn't be fought alone. Dale had crawled to his feet, was stumbling toward the street. Clara watched him go, feeling the last chains of her old life breaking. "He'll make trouble for you now," she said.
"Let him try. I've got lawyers in Billings and friends in high places. Dale Hartley's got nothing but spite and cowardice."
Jonah flexed his bruised knuckles.
"Besides, been wanting to do that since the day you arrived. Why didn't you?"
"Wasn't my place then. You needed to find your own feet first." He met her eyes. "Is it my place now, Clara?" Standing there in the muddy yard, rain starting to fall again. Clara felt the last of her walls crumble. This man had given her shelter, work, respect, had waited patiently while she rebuilt herself, had defended her honor with his fists and his reputation.
"Yes,"
she whispered. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, cupped her face in his rough hands. "Say that again."
"Yes, Jonah, it's your place."
He kissed her then, there in the rain with the horses watching and mud beneath their feet. Not the desperate kiss of passion, but something deeper, a promise, a claiming, a coming home. When they broke apart, Clara was trembling.
"People will see."
"Good. Let them see. Let the whole town know you're under my protection." More than protection. He rested his forehead against hers. "If you'll have me." "Jonah Maddox, are you proposing in a stable yard?" "I'm proposing wherever you'll listen. In the mud, in the rain, in front of the whole damn town if needed." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I know you came here for another man's promises, but I'm hoping you'll stay for mine." Clara thought of the satchel he'd made, the quiet support, the patient waiting. Thought of cold nights in St. Louis dreaming of exactly this, not the fairy tale Dale had spun, but something real and solid and true. "I'll stay," she said. He kissed her again, and this time she heard whooping from the stable doors. Cowboys who'd apparently been watching the whole scene scattered as Jonah mock glared at them. "Nothing to see here, boys." "Hell, there ain't," someone called. "Murphy owes me $5. Said it'd take you till Christmas to speak up." Clara laughed, surprising herself. Here she stood, soaked and muddy, being proposed to in a stable after watching her former intended get punched into a water trough. Not the romance she'd imagined as a girl. It was better. "Come to the ranch tomorrow," Jonah said. "We'll do this proper, ring and everything. I have work." "Bring it. Sarah's been after me to court you proper for weeks. She'll be insufferable now." He walked her to her door, kissed her once more, soft and sure. "No more hiding, Clara, no more making yourself small. You're going to be Mrs. Maddox, and this whole town's going to know what a lucky bastard I am." After he left, Clara touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. Through her window, she could see lights in the town, Hear the normal sounds of evening. Tomorrow the gossip would fly. Some would celebrate, others condemn. Dale would rage from wherever he'd crawled to lick his wounds. But tonight, Clara Roan, soon-to-be Maddox, sat in her little room and smiled. She'd come west for one man's lies and found another man's truth, lost a false future and gained a real one. The rain drummed on the roof, washing the mud from the yard, cleaning the slate for tomorrow. Clara picked up her sewing baby clothes for Ellen Harper's sister, who'd heard about the seamstress who delivered babies and mended lives. Each stitch wrote her new story. Not the abandoned bride or the stable seamstress, but Clara, whole and strong and finally, truly, home. Dale Hartley didn't take the morning stage. Clara discovered this when Mrs. McMurray suddenly extended credit again, eyes darting nervously as she measured out thread. The baker had fresh bread available. The blacksmith could fix her scissors after all. Dale's been spreading money around, Lucy reported that afternoon. Buying drinks, telling tales, says Jonah Maddox assaulted him unprovoked, says you've bewitched half the town. Clara's hands stilled on the wedding veil she was mending. Ironic work, given the circumstances. What else? He's hired that lawyer from Billings, Fitzpatrick, the crooked one who got the Watson boys off after they rustled those cattle. A chill ran down Clara's spine. She'd thought Dale would slink away after Jonah's threat, but wounded pride and whiskey made men dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with fists. Also, Lucy continued reluctantly, his wife came back, Alice, but she left. Her PA sent her back, said marriage is sacred, that she needed to stand by her husband. Lucy's face twisted with disgust. She's staying at the hotel with him, looking pale as death but doing what she's told. Clara felt sick. That poor girl, trapped between a father who saw her as property and a husband who saw her as decoration. Has anyone talked to her? Martha tried. Alice wouldn't even look at her, just kept saying everything was fine, that Dale was a good husband, that people were being cruel to him. That evening, Clara found it hard to focus on her work. She'd sent word to Jonah about Dale staying, but he was at the fort delivering horses and wouldn't return until tomorrow. The stable felt too quiet, too exposed. Every footstep outside made her tense. Near midnight, a soft knock came. Clara gripped her scissors, approached carefully. Who's there? Please. A woman's voice, barely audible. Please, I need help. Clara opened the door to find Alice Hartley, face swollen from crying, a bruise darkening her left cheek. My God! Clara pulled her inside. What did he do? It's nothing. I shouldn't have come. He said not to talk to you, but I didn't know where else. Alice collapsed on the cot, sobbing. Clara lit more lamps, heated water, found clean cloths. She'd seen this before her own father, in his drinking days, before Mother's death sobered him. The careful way Alice moved, protecting her ribs, the shame mixed with desperate need for help. How long has he been hitting you? He doesn't mean to, only when he drinks, and only since I came back. Alice winced as Clara cleaned her face. He's so angry all the time, says it's your fault, that you've ruined everything. Alice, this isn't anyone's fault but his. You need to leave. I can't. Father says divorce is a sin. Says I made vows. Her voice broke. I just wanted a home, children, what every woman wants. Clara thought of her own dreams, shipped west in letters full of lies. What we want and what we get are rarely the same, but that doesn't mean we have to accept cruelty. You don't understand. You're strong, independent. You can make your own way. Alice touched her swollen face. I've never worked a day in my life. Never learned anything useful. What would I do? Learn, Clara said firmly. I'll teach you. Other women will too. But first, you need somewhere safe to stay. I have to go back. If he wakes and finds me gone, then we'll make sure he doesn't wake. Clara left Alice huddled on the cot and went to find Tom Fisher, who was checking the horses before bed. His face darkened as she explained, "That yellow-bellied snake, hitting women now. Can you get word to Jonah and maybe watch the hotel? Make sure Dale doesn't come looking? Consider it done. And Miss Clara, you're doing right, helping her. Whatever that man says about you, this town knows your true character." Clara returned to find Alice studying her sewing supplies with wonder. "You really make a living with just needle and thread. And stubbornness. Lots of that." Clara pulled out fabric scraps. "Here, let's start with something simple. Hemming." For the next hour, she taught Alice basic stitches. The girl was clumsy but determined, pricking her fingers repeatedly but refusing to quit. It reminded Clara of teaching her youngest sister years ago. "My mother tried to teach me once," Alice said softly. "But father said ladies didn't need such skills. That's what servants were for." "Your father was wrong. Everyone needs skills. Something that's theirs, that can't be taken away. Is that why you didn't go back to St. Louis, because you had skills?" Clara considered. "Partly, but mostly because going back would have meant accepting defeat, letting Dale's lies define me. I wish I was brave like you." "Bravery isn't not being scared. It's acting despite the fear." Clara touched Alice's shoulder gently. "You're here, aren't you?" That took courage. Dawn was breaking when Tom returned with Sarah Fisher and Martha Doyle. The women took one look at Alice's bruised face and went into action. "Right," Sarah said briskly. "You'll stay at our place. We've got a spare room and my husband won't let any man near who shouldn't be." "But Dale can explain to the law why he's beating his wife." Martha interrupted. "Sheriff Dawson's back from Billings. He doesn't hold with men who hit women." Alice shrank back. "No, please, it'll make things worse. Father will be so angry." "Your father sent you back to a man who hits you," Sarah said bluntly. "His anger stopped mattering the moment he chose propriety over your safety." They bundled Alice away as the town began to stir. Clara watched from her doorway, knowing this would bring consequences. Dale wouldn't let his wife's defection go unanswered. She didn't have long to wait. By noon, Dale stood in the stable yard, Fitzpatrick the lawyer beside him, Sheriff Dawson between them and Clara's door. "She's kidnapped my wife," Dale declared loudly, drawing a crowd. "Turned her against me with her poisoned tongue." "That so?" Sheriff Dawson, a steady man Clara had mended shirts for, looked unimpressed. "Heard your wife showed up with bruises. Got anything to say about that?" "I spread by that woman." Dale pointed at Clara. "She's been trying to destroy my marriage since she arrived. Jealous because I chose Alice over her." Clara stepped forward. "Your wife came here hurt and frightened. I gave her shelter. If that's a crime, arrest me." "You see," Dale turned to the growing crowd, "she admits to harboring my wife, filling her head with rebellious ideas. Like the idea that husbands shouldn't beat their wives." Clara kept her voice level. "Yes, I'm guilty of that." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Several women moved closer to Clara's side of the yard. Fitzpatrick cleared his throat. "My client demands the return of his wife. The law is clear, a husband has rights." "And the law is also clear about assault," Sheriff Dawson countered. "Mrs. Hartley's pressing charges." "She wouldn't dare," Dale snarled. "Already has signed the papers this morning." The sheriff's hand rested on his pistol. "Now, you can come quietly and answer questions. Or I can arrest you here in front of everyone. Your choice." Dale's face went purple. "This is all her doing." He lunged toward Clara. Sheriff Dawson caught him, spun him around, but Dale twisted free, pulled something from his coat, a small derringer, pointing straight at Clara. Time slowed. Clara saw the barrel, saw Dale's finger tighten, heard screams from the crowd. Then Tom Fisher slammed into Dale from the side, sending them both sprawling. The gun went off, bullet whining past Clara's ear to embed in the stable wall. Sheriff Dawson was on Dale in seconds, wrestling the gun away. getting cuffs on him. That's attempted murder. Hartley, you just bought yourself a long stay in territorial prison."
You don't understand," Dale screamed as they hauled him up. "She ruined everything, everything."
His eyes found Clara, wild with rage and something else, bewilderment. Maybe, as if he truly couldn't understand how the world had turned against him, how the woman he'd discarded had refused to disappear quietly.
"I offered you marriage,"
he spat. "I was going to make you respectable." "No," Clara said quietly. "I made myself respectable, through work and courage and refusing to accept less than I deserved." She stepped closer, letting him see her clearly. "You did me a favor. Dale, your rejection led me to something real." They dragged him away, still cursing. Fitzpatrick scurried after, already calculating how to salvage his fee from this disaster. The crowd began to disperse, but not before several women pressed Clara's hand, murmured support. Wilson gruffly announced that anyone bothering his tenant would answer to him. Even Virgil Peck mumbled something about store credit being available again. Clara was sweeping up glass from a broken lantern knocked over in the struggle when hoofbeats thundered into the yard. Jonah swung down from his horse before it fully stopped, crossing to her in 3 strides. "I heard—" His hands ran over her arms, her face, checking for injury. "Tom sent word. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Tom saved me." "Thank God." He pulled her against him, right there in the open yard. "When I heard he had a gun." "It's over. Sheriff arrested him." "Should have killed him that night in the rain. Would have saved everyone trouble."
"No?"
Clara pulled back to look at him.
"Then you'd be in jail instead of here, and I need you here."
His expression softened. He cupped her face, kissed her forehead. "You're right, as usual."
"Alice is safe. She's pressing charges. She's going to be all right."
"Because of you. You gave her courage." She always had it, just needed reminding. Clara leaned into his solid warmth.
"Like I did."
That afternoon, Alice came to the stable with Sarah. Her bruises looked worse in daylight, but her chin was higher than Clara had ever seen it.
"I wanted to thank you,"
Alice said formally.
"and to apologize for taking Dale from you, for believing his lies about you. You don't owe me anything. We were both deceived."
"No." Alice's voice grew stronger.
"You saw through him, stood up to him. I just accepted, like I accepted everything my whole life."
She held up bandaged fingers. "Sarah's teaching me to cook. Martha's showing me laundry. And I wondered, would you still teach me sewing?"
"Of course."
Alice smiled, probably the first real smile Clara had seen from her. "Good, because I've decided something. When the divorce is final, I'm not going back to my father. I'm going to work, earn my own way, like you." After they left, Clara sat in her doorway, watching the ordinary life of Wolf Pine flow past. Tomorrow there would be new challenges. The trial, the gossip, the slow work of rebuilding Alice's life and confidence. But today, she'd face down the past one final time. Dale Hartley had no more power over her story. That chapter was closed, sealed with his own violence and failure. Jonah found her there at sunset, bringing dinner and companionship. They ate in comfortable silence, watching the sky paint itself purple and gold. "Set a date," he said suddenly. "What?" "For our wedding. I'm tired of waiting. Tired of you in this stable instead of our home." "Jonah." "Next month. Sarah can plan it. The whole town can come or not as they please. But I want you wearing my ring, carrying my name." He took her hand. "Unless you need more time." Clara thought of all the reasons to wait. Her business to consider, propriety to observe, gossip to weather. Then she thought of Tom Fisher throwing himself at a man with a gun, of Alice finding courage to leave, of life being uncertain and precious and not guaranteed to anyone. "Next month," she agreed. His smile lit up the growing darkness. "Sarah will be impossible. Fair warning." I survived Dale Hartley. I can survive your foreman's wife's wedding planning. They laughed together as stars began to appear. Around them, Wolf Pine settled into evening horses stomping, saloon music drifting, life continuing its endless rhythm. Clara had come west for one story and written another entirely. Not the tale of a rescued bride, but of a woman who rescued herself, who built something from nothing with needle and thread and sheer determination. Next month, she'd write a new chapter, but tonight, sitting beside the man who saw her strength as beauty, she was exactly where she belonged. The news of Dale Hartley's arrest spread through Wolf Pine like wildfire, but it was what Alice did next that truly set tongues wagging. She appeared at McMurray's general store the morning after, bruises still visible, and hung a simple sign in the window, "Seamstress assistant wanted, inquire at Wilson's stable." Clara found her there an hour later, calmly interviewing Lucy Turner for the position.
"I can't pay much yet,"
Alice was saying,
"but Miss Roan will teach us both, and we'll split the earnings fair."
Lucy glanced at Clara, eyebrows raised. Clara nodded slightly. She'd support whatever Alice decided.
"I accept,"
Lucy said. "When do we start?"
"Now, if Miss Roan agrees."
Alice turned to Clara, chin high despite the purple marks on her face. "I know I have no right to ask, after everything, but I need to learn. And I thought, maybe we could all benefit." Clara studied the woman who'd married the man meant for her, saw not a rival but a fellow survivor. "The tack room's too small for 3. We'll need a proper shop." Alice's face lit up. "I have money. Not much. Dale controlled most of it, but I saved some from household accounts. Hidden it, actually." Her voice dropped.
"I'd been planning to run for months. Just couldn't find the courage until you showed me it was possible."
And so, impossibly, Clara found herself going into business with Dale Hartley's wife. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all the gossips who gathered daily at McMurray's store. They rented the empty millinery shop on Main Street, its large windows perfect for displaying work. Sarah Fisher donated curtains. Martha Doyle provided a table and chairs. Even Mrs. McMurray, perhaps feeling guilty for her earlier coldness, offered fabric remnants at cost.
"Look at this,"
Lucy breathed, running her hands over the cutting table they'd installed. "A real shop. Our name's on the window. Roan and Associates, Fine Tailoring and Mending." Alice read from the freshly painted sign. "It sounds so professional." "Because we are professionals," Clara said firmly. "Or will be. Lucy, you'll handle dance costumes and theatrical work. Alice, you'll take basic mending while you learn. I'll manage complex tailoring and teach you both." It should have been awkward, the 3 of them working together, but shared purpose smoothed the edges. Lucy's cheerful chatter filled silence. Alice's determination to learn impressed them all, and Clara found unexpected satisfaction in teaching, in watching understanding dawn on her partners' faces. The shop had been open 3 days when a familiar figure darkened the doorway. Judge Clarence Hartley Dale's father stood ramrod straight, expensive suit impeccable, face carved from granite. "Miss Roan, Alice." He said her name like it tasted bitter. "I've come to discuss this situation." "There's nothing to discuss," Alice said quietly. "I filed for divorce. Dale's in jail. It's over." "Nothing is over until I say so." The judge's eyes were cold as Dale's, but sharper, more calculating. "You're my daughter-in-law. That means something in this territory." "It meant something," Clara interjected, moving to stand beside Alice. "Until your son put bruises on her face. You..." The judge's gaze swung to her. "The root of all this trouble. If you'd stayed in St. Louis where you belonged, your son would still be a liar and a brute," Clara finished. "I just gave him the opportunity to show it publicly." "How dare you? How dare you?" Alice stepped forward, trembling but resolute. "You knew what he was. His mother warned me before the wedding, said to be careful when he drank, but you insisted the match would be good for both families. You had a duty. My only duty now is to myself." Alice lifted her chin. "I'm divorcing your son. I'm learning a trade. And if you try to interfere, I'll tell everyone in Billings society exactly why I left, including what he did to that saloon girl 2 years ago. Oh yes, I know about that. Amazing what servants overhear." The judge's face went white. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then Judge Hartley turned on his heel and left without another word. Alice sank into a chair, shaking. "I can't believe I just did that." "You were magnificent," Lucy said, "like something out of a play." "Speaking of plays," Clara said, recognizing Alice needed distraction. "The theater troupe from Denver will be here next month. They'll need costumes mended. Lucy, this could establish your reputation." They dove into planning, and gradually Alice's color returned. By evening, when Jonah stopped by to walk Clara home, the shop hummed with productive energy. "Heard Judge Hartley paid a visit," he said as they strolled toward the stable. Alice handled him beautifully. She's stronger than anyone credited, including herself. Jonah squeezed her hand. "You did that. Gave her an example to follow." "She'd have found her way eventually." "Maybe, but you made it easier." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "That's what you do, Clara. Make people see they're capable of more than they imagined." "Is that what I did for you?" "No." His thumb traced her knuckles. "You made me see I was capable of feeling again. After Catherine, I thought that part of me had died. Then you arrived, all fury and pride and competence, and suddenly I was alive in ways I'd forgotten." Clara's throat tightened. "Jonah." 2 more weeks until the wedding. 2 more weeks of walking you home instead of having you there. I'm counting days like a schoolboy. Sarah has us so busy with preparations, the time will fly." Clara smiled. "Did you know she's ordered flowers from Denver and convinced the hotel to cater? It's becoming quite the production. You deserve it. Deserve the whole town seeing you claimed and celebrated." He pulled her closer. "My wife has a nice sound. Better than the stable seamstress. You were never just that. Even that first night, half frozen and abandoned, you were something more." He kissed her softly. "You were yourself. That's all you ever needed to be." The next morning brought unexpected news. Martha burst into the shop waving a letter. "From the governor's wife. She heard about our women's collective, how we supported each other through the fire and Dale's persecution. She wants to visit, maybe establish something similar in Helena." "Our collective?" Clara asked. "That's what she called it. Women working together, supporting each other's businesses, sharing skills." Martha beamed. She particularly mentioned wanting to meet the seamstress who delivered babies and stood up to powerful men. Alice paled. "The governor's wife knows about me. Seems Judge Hartley complained to some powerful friends about his son's unfair treatment. Backfired spectacularly. The governor's wife has opinions about men who beat their wives." Martha's grin widened. "She's coming next week. Wants to commission a dress from our shop." "Our shop?" The words echoed as Clara looked around the sunny room. Lucy was hemming a dance costume, tongue between her teeth in concentration. Alice practiced buttonholes with growing confidence. Sunlight streamed through windows that displayed their best work. 6 months ago, she'd huddled in an empty house, abandoned and alone. Now she had a business, partners, a community of women who'd fought for her as she'd fought for them. And Jonah, steady, patient Jonah, who'd seen her worth when she could barely see it herself. That night, she found him at the ranch, working late in the barn. He looked up from the saddle he was mending, smiled in that quiet way that still made her pulse skip. Couldn't wait 2 weeks after all. "Sarah sent me to approve flower arrangements. But really, I wanted to tell you about the governor's wife." She shared the news as he worked, comfortable in the lantern-lit space that smelled of leather and hay. He listened with growing pride. occasionally asking questions. "You've built something important," he said when she finished. "Not just a business, a community, a place where women like Alice can find their strength. We built it, all of us together, led by you." He set aside the saddle, drew her into his arms. "My remarkable Clara, do you know what you've accomplished?" "I know I'm tired," she admitted, leaning into him. "And happy, and a little terrified about meeting the governor's wife." "She should be terrified to meet you. A woman who delivers babies, fights fires, faces down violent men, and transforms lives." He kissed her temple. "You're a force of nature." "I'm just Clara." "Exactly. Just Clara is more than enough. Always has been." 2 weeks later, standing in the church, wearing the dress she'd made herself ivory silk with touches of blue, practical yet beautiful, Clara thought about journeys, how they rarely ended where you expected, how the path to happiness was never straight. The church overflowed. The entire women's collective filled the front pews. Cowboys from Jonah's ranch stood along the walls. Even the governor's wife had stayed to witness what she called a new chapter in Montana women's history. Alice stood as her bridesmaid scandal to some, but Clara wouldn't have anyone else. The woman who'd married Clara's intended now stood witness to her true match, life's ironies at their finest. Jonah waited at the altar, looking uncomfortable in his new suit but smiling in a way that transformed his weathered face. Tom Fisher stood beside him as best man, the one who'd saved her life, now celebrating her happiness. Pastor Williams read the vows. Clara spoke her promises clearly, meaning every word. This wasn't the desperate grab for security she'd planned with Dale. This was choosing and being chosen, building something together. "I now pronounce you man and wife." Jonah's kiss was thorough enough to make the cowboys whoop and the church ladies fan themselves. Clara laughed against his lips, not caring about propriety. She'd spent too long making herself small. Today, she'd be exactly as happy as she felt. The reception filled the hotel dining room. Clara watched it all with wonder. Lucy dancing with a young rancher. Alice deep in conversation with the governor's wife. Sarah Fisher organizing everything with military precision. "No regrets?" Jonah asked, pulling her onto the small dance floor. "About what?" "Not getting the life you came here for, the house with green shutters, the man you thought you wanted." Clara looked up at him, this good man who'd waited while she found herself, who'd offered support without conditions, who saw her strength as beautiful. "I got exactly the life I came here for," she said. "I just had to build it myself first." He spun her, brought her back close, around them. Their community celebrated. The band played. Children darted between dancing couples. And Clara Roan, no. Clara Maddox now stood tall in her husband's arms, finally home. Outside, snow began to fall, covering Wolf Pine in fresh white. But inside was warmth and light and the laughter of people who'd chosen each other, despite everything, because of everything. It was enough, more than enough. It was perfect. The spring rain fell gentle on Wolf Pine, washing winter's last traces from the muddy streets. Clara stood in the doorway of the shop, their shop watching the world wake fresh and new. 6 months married, and still she sometimes forgot she wasn't Clara Roan anymore, fighting alone against the world. "You're up early." Alice emerged from the back room where she'd been working late on the governor's wife's second commission. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but satisfaction lit her face. "Couldn't sleep either." "Too much on my mind." Clara turned from the door. "The new contracts from Fort Benton, the expansion plans, whether we have enough silk for Mrs. Henderson's wedding dress." And Alice's knowing look suggested she heard what Clara wasn't saying. "And other things." Clara's hand drifted to her still flat stomach. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Jonah. Wanted to be sure first, but her body was changing in familiar ways she'd helped enough women to recognize the signs. The shop bell chimed. Lucy burst in, shaking rain from her shawl, eyes bright with news. He's back. Dale's back in town. Clara's blood went cold. That's impossible. His sentence... Judge Hartley pulled strings. Got him released early for good behavior. Lucy's face twisted. He's at the hotel, already drinking, telling anyone who listened that he's come to set things right. Alice sank into a chair. He can't. The divorce is final. I'm free of him. Men like Dale don't accept being left. Clara moved to the window, scanning the street. Where's Sheriff Dawson? Gone to Billings for prisoner transport. Won't be back for days. Lucy joined her at the window. But Dale's not alone. He's got 2 men with him. Rough types from the mining camps. Clara's mind raced. Jonah was at the ranch with most of his men, moving the spring herd. Tom Fisher had gone to Helena on business. The town's protectors were scattered, and Dale knew it. Had probably planned it. Lock the doors, she ordered. We're closing early. But even as Alice moved to comply, boots thundered on the boardwalk. The door slammed open. Dale stood there, rain dripping from his coat, face twisted with the same ugly rage she remembered. Behind him, 2 men who looked like they'd crawl through hell for drinking money. Well, the 3 witches, together in their den. Dale swayed slightly, but his eyes were vicious sharp. How cozy. Get out! Clara stepped forward, putting herself between him and the others. You're not welcome here. Not welcome in the shop my wife built with my money? He laughed. Ugly sound. Everything here is mine by rights, including her. I'm not your wife. Alice stood shakily. The divorce? Pieces of paper. Signatures mean nothing when they're coerced. Dale moved closer. His companions spread out, blocking escape. You're coming home. Alice, tonight. And you. His gaze found Clara. You're going to pay for every humiliation, every moment in that cell, every... The shop door chimed again. Martha Doyle entered with Ellen Harper, both women stopping short at the scene. Then Martha's eyes narrowed. Ellen, go get help, now! One of Dale's men moved to block her, but Ellen was faster. She darted out, baby clutched tight, screaming for help as she ran. Stupid woman. Dale's face darkened. Now we have to hurry. He grabbed for Alice. Clara swung the heavy scissors from the cutting table, catching him across the knuckles. He howled, jerked back. His companion surged forward. What followed was chaos. Clara fought with scissors and fury. Lucy threw bolts of fabric, blinding one attacker. Alice, finding courage in desperation, wielded a pressing iron like a club. Martha grabbed the shop's ledger and brought it down hard on someone's head. But they were outnumbered, outmuscled. One man wrestled Clara's scissors away. Another backed Lucy into a corner. Dale, blood dripping from his hand, advanced on Alice with murder in his eyes. Then the window exploded inward. Jonah came through in a shower of glass, already swinging. Behind him, Tom Fisher and 3 ranch hands poured through the door. The shop became a battlefield, fists flying, bodies crashing into displays, silk and violence mixing in terrible symphony. Clara found herself pressed against the wall, Jonah shielding her as he drove Dale back with methodical punches. Each blow precise, controlled, devastating. Should have killed you that night, Jonah said conversationally, blocking Dale's wild swing. Would have saved everyone trouble. She's mine, Dale screamed. Both of them are mine, I had them first. Jonah's fist connected with Dale's jaw. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Dale went down hard, didn't get up. His companions, seeing their leader fall, tried to run, didn't make it far. Tom Fisher and the ranch hands were thorough in their discouragements. As sudden as it began, it ended. The shop looked like a tornado had struck fabric everywhere, furniture overturned, window gone, but they were alive, all of them. Clara! Jonah's hands framed her face, checking for injury. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm fine. We're all fine. She caught his hands, held them tight. How did you know? Ellen Harper rode out to the ranch like the devil was chasing her. His thumb traced a small cut on her cheek. We nearly killed the horses getting here. Sheriff Dawson arrived then with his deputies, having cut his trip short at some divine instinct. Dale and his men were hauled away, Dale unconscious, the others wishing they were. This time, he stays locked up, the sheriff promised. Judge or no judge, attacking women in broad daylight, he'll be lucky if they don't hang him. The women's collective descended, then Sarah Fisher with bandages and bossy care. Ellen Harper crying with relief, others bringing brooms and boards for the window. In minutes, the shop transformed from battlefield to recovery ward.
We'll need new fabric,
Lucy said practically, surveying the damage.
and glass, and furniture.
We'll rebuild. Alice's voice was steady now, the trembling gone. Better than before.
Clara looked at her, this woman who'd stolen her intended, become her friend, found her strength. Yes, we will.
That evening, the shop temporarily boarded but secure. Clara finally found herself alone with Jonah. They stood where the window had been, looking out at Wolf Pine settling into evening peace.
I was so scared,
she admitted.
when I saw him, when I realized we were trapped.
You fought. His arm came around her, solid and warm. Didn't wait for rescue, didn't cower. You fought. With scissors, she laughed shakily.
Not very ladylike.
To hell with ladylike. You protected what was yours. That's what matters. He turned her to face him. Though next time, maybe wait for backup before taking on 3 men.
Next time you think Dale will...
No, Dale's finished. But there's always something in this life. Storms, fires, violent men. His hand came to rest on her stomach, gentle question in his eyes. Especially with young ones to protect. Clara's breath caught.
How did you... Sarah mentioned you've been tired, queasy in the mornings, and you've got that look my sister had.
His voice went soft. Were you going to tell me? Tonight, I wanted to be sure first.
And are you sure?
She covered his hand with hers.
Yes, due in autumn, I think.
His kiss was answer enough, joy and promise and fierce protection all at once. When they broke apart, his eyes were suspiciously bright.
A baby. Our baby.
He laughed, sound of pure happiness. Wait until Sarah hears. She'll be insufferable. She'll spoil the child rotten. Everyone will. First baby born to the women's collective, that child will have 12 mothers, 24 aunts, and every ranch hand on the spread wrapped around its tiny finger. Clara leaned into him, watching their town, their home settle into peace. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Glass to replace, stock to salvage. Dale's trial to endure, but also work to do, lives to build, a child to prepare for.
You know what I'm thinking, she said.
What's that?
That little house with green shutters, the one Dale promised.
It's still empty. Jonah's arm tightened around her. You want to buy it? For the shop expansion, Alice needs her own space for the advanced work. Lucy's costume business is growing. We need room. She smiled up at him.
Besides, I like the idea of that house becoming something Dale never imagined. A place where women build their own futures.
Have I mentioned that I love you? Once or twice. She pulled his head down for another kiss, but I don't mind hearing it again. Later, walking home to the ranch under a canopy of stars, Clara thought about circles, how she'd started this journey in pursuit of one life and found another entirely. The house that was meant to cage her would become a symbol of freedom. The woman who'd married her intended was now her dearest friend. The town that had gossiped about her now protected her as their own. And the man beside her, this quiet, steady man who'd waited while she found her strength, was worth every mile traveled, every tear shed, every battle fought. Regrets? He asked, echoing his wedding question. Never, she answered, meaning it to her bones. The ranch appeared before them, windows glowing warm against the darkness. Home. Not the fantasy she'd built from lying letters, but something real and solid, and hers. Sarah met them at the door, already knowing somehow the woman had supernatural instincts about these things.
A baby, oh, Clara, a baby.
The news spread through the ranch like wildfire. Within minutes, Clara was surrounded by congratulations, advice, and promises of help. Tom Fisher immediately began planning a cradle. The ranch hands argued over who'd teach the child to ride first. It could be a girl, Clara reminded them. Even better, Murphy declared. Girls make the best riders, like their mothers steady and sensible. Clara laughed, surrounded by her chosen family and her chosen home. Tomorrow she'd return to the shop, help Alice and Lucy restore order, continue building their business. The governor's wife had promised to spread word of their collective throughout the territory. Who knew how far it might grow? But tonight, she was simply Clara Maddox seamstress, fighter, wife, soon-to-be mother, a woman who'd come west for one story and written herself into a better one. The spring rain had stopped. Stars emerged between scattered clouds. And in Wolf Pine, Montana, 3 women's futures intertwined like threads in a tapestry, stronger together than any could be alone. Clara placed her hand over the new life growing within her, felt Jonah's warmth at her back, heard Sarah's excited planning filling the kitchen. This wasn't the ending she'd imagined all those months ago, reading false promises by candlelight. It was infinitely better. Thank you for listening to this story of Clara Roan and her journey to find strength, love, and belonging in the Wild West. If you enjoyed this tale, please take a moment to comment below and share where you're listening from. I'd love to hear your thoughts and connect with fellow story lovers around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850 for more authentic frontier tales. Hit that like button if Clara's courage inspired you, and please support by clicking the hype button so this story can reach and touch more hearts. Until next time, keep riding toward your own horizons.